Let me start off by first stating that no, your legend does not need a buff. Each and every legend in Apex is designed in their own way. These designs are character and ability specific. This does not mean that they are built to be the best of the best. Even if your favorite main does need a buff, it doesn't mean that buff should make said legend one of the best, and that is and should be perfectly fine. They all have their own roles, and sure, they may fit into a specific category of being defensive or support or attack, but their abilities give them a more unique identity. Too many powerful legends, abilities, or ultimates makes things a lot less entertaining, especially for 90% of the community, which is the casual player base. I'm usually not one to pick a side with these sorts of things, but I'm sure that many players, professionals, or even casuals who understand the prospect in which Respawn developers give, they can all agree that not every legend should be super powerful. And to add to this, Respawn agrees with this sentiment as well. And I'd like to mention that this video idea came to mind when I was talking to someone I did a VOD review for, so shout out to Judd for such intuition. I did some digging and found some conversations between players and Apex developers discussing this exact topic, and to my surprise, there's still a fair amount of people who still do not understand the concept that not every legend should be buffed to all hell. The day the aftermarket event patch notes came out, there were a lot of players upset to see that Loba's buff to her ultimate was rather useless and that they should focus on and buff her tactical instead. I understand the frustration, especially since for an entire season her tactical ability was not working in the way the devs intended. However, that was fixed, but the buff players complained about was that there wasn't one for her tactical ability. Her ultimate and passive range got increased to a huge distance, and she now starts the match with her ultimate half charged. Yet players did not feel that this was enough or the right thing for the devs to do. And when looking at Loba's tactical ability, there's not much to really buff with it other than the animation time, the throw speed, and the distance at which it can be thrown, which I'm also sure that the devs have discussed and looked into before and may or may not buff it in the future. She can get out of some pretty tight situations, but in all reality, Loba is a support role legend whose entire concept is based around looting. Nothing more. Another Reddit user complained about this, stating, "I don't understand why they are afraid of making big legend changes most of the time. The game has been out for more than 1.5 years and the legend tier ranking has been exactly the same, except for Gibraltar. And all new legends are consistently at the bottom tier. Most of the time, when there is a big buff, there's always a nerf attached to it, even though the legend is totally useless and will be even after the buff. They keep shifting the gun meta continuously, but the legend changes are always too small, except for 1 or 2 rare cases." As for its very first sentence, the reason devs don't make a big immediate change to legends is because most of the time that would change the game in its entirety. With big changes comes a lot of negative feedback and an unhappy community, which will slowly stop playing the game. But if they were to make a big change to a gun, like adding a new gun, like the Volt for example, that doesn't really change the game that much because of it is not character specific. That is a gun that will randomly spawn somewhere inside the map. So not everyone has the ability to use that gun that game. And realistically speaking, it is much easier to make changes and fixes to guns rather than an entire legend. It's quite obvious though that this person does not understand why things are balanced the way that they are, which I explained at the very start of the video, but the devs go into much better depth than me, and all I can do is agree with them on this. The game is not based around legends and their abilities. Sure, it might be part of the game, but this is a gun game with characters, not a character game with guns. In response to this, Respawn designer AmusedApricot, who I don't know the actual name of, I'm super sorry, but I can't find any actual information on your real identity, but I'm just gonna call you Apricot for now on. They responded with this: "This is complicated by a number of factors. We are intentionally a gun game with characters, not the other way around. We try to avoid making legends within combat just press Q and do damage abilities for a number of reasons. We want to use legends to explore other aspects of a battle royale so that they can be differentiated and have a unique play space. Think about Loba. We want a loot-focused character. That seems like an interesting axis to touch. However, it just has turned out that almost all of these interesting axes of power are just not nearly as powerful as things like hitbox size, mobility, and combat utility." And that's something I really like that AmusedApricot said about just press Q and do damage. They don't want to do that. They only want damage to be dealt from ultimate abilities or guns, not a tactical ability that's just on a very short cooldown. This right here though alone should explain it all, but man, AmusedApricot really hits the nail on the head here with that statement alone, and they also continue stating that legends take a long time to make. We see how the game is playing out and are making adjustments, but reacting to it properly takes time. And if you think about it, that is very true. The devs can have test servers and test this stuff themselves, but they don't know how it's actually going to play out until the entire community joins along with it. Looking at the pro side of things, the competitive side of things, and then the casual side of things as well. They continue with that it's okay to have legends in these play spaces, even if those play spaces aren't super competitively viable. Sure, Loba probably isn't going to be in ALGs anytime soon, but there is a very real and important group of players who really like Loba. It's not like no one plays her in general, just not at the tip top of Pred lobbies. But sometimes it's worth improving legends in the way they best benefit the people who actually connect with that character and really want to play them, instead of shoehorning them into the spaces we know are useful at the competitive level so they'll be picked because they're strong. In my opinion, it's important to keep character identity, even if that identity is naturally weaker, to a degree. With this being said, it's quite clear and evident that the developers' intentions of these legends is not to make them all for competitive play. There are plenty who fit into that niche, but a majority do not, for the reason that it wouldn't be reasonable to do so. There are a lot of key factors that dictate whether or not a legend would be good for the competitive scene, like hitbox, mobility, abilities, the synergy between other legends, and more. The biggest part of them all has to be mobility, because that movement can be a game changer in itself, which is why you see Wraith constantly at 100% pick rate in squads for ALGs. Her movement and abilities are like no other legends in the game, and because they are so good for herself solo as they are when playing as a team, not picking her in a team composition or even a solo composition would be outright stupid for anyone to do. If you thought this wasn't enough information, Daniel Klein came in clutch as backup and obliterated everyone's negative responses to this. And for those of you who do not know, Daniel Klein is a designer over at Respawn Entertainment, and he is the one that actually makes these changes to said legends. He opens up saying, "I am going to push Loba's loot power some more next patch. I hope, but there's only so much you could do short of press button to get full gold equip and a Kraber/R99 to punch that power up." He's basically saying that there's not much else to buff with Loba when she could grab loot from an insane distance away, through walls, inside boxes, anywhere in the map within the radius of her ultimate, and that loot can literally be anything and can be picked up. He continues with, "The main reason we can't just bring everyone up to Lifeline Wraith Pathfinder's level, Gibby isn't anywhere near their level of power, is that we're then stepping away from making a gun game and approaching making a character game." And this is me paraphrasing here, but he brings up how he loves to play Overwatch, which is a character-based game. But as much as he enjoys it, it's not the game that they're making with Apex. And I'm very glad that they are saying that they want Apex to be a gun game, not a character game, because that would change the entire game's identity alone, and you would be seeing another Overwatch copycat. This next block of text, he says, is absolutely amazing, as he gets into the nitty-gritty of things even with several examples. You could do serious damage to the fun of a game by making changes that individually don't seem broken. Like, say we made it so Caustic could shoot his own barrels while they're still in the air for an instant airburst that leaves a cloud of gas where they exploded. Cool. Only now he's pushing you with essentially 3 gas grenades, and his ability to use his tactical well trumps your ability to position and aim well. Say we give Loba the ability to teleport quickly and silently, and suddenly you're losing fights, not because the other team planned an ambush or executed better, but because they saw you and reacted to you by putting one of their members behind you. And of course you'll say, cool, we could counter that with other abilities, but now we're talking about a game of ability versus ability rather than gun versus gun. I agree with everything he says there, but the last example is a little strange, because being silent and teleporting behind someone, that really isn't practical and won't be ideal, of course. And if you aren't able to notice that going on as she throws her ring behind your squad, as it's, you know, a giant glowing trail following her ring, I think that's your own fault for not being aware of your surroundings. But all in all, there's really nothing to clarify here, as it was a perfectly executed statement. But the next line he says is probably one of my favorites I've ever heard from a dev. "There's still a lot of cool shit we can do that only reinforces the supplemental role of abilities in the game. And yes, there's some power we can give to the war as performing legends without breaking the nature of Apex, but it's not enough power to bring them up to the likes of Wraith. And this is where he gets into what I discussed earlier about Wraith, and both of our ideologies match up perfectly in regards to her design. I've also been debating whether or not I should make a video on why Wraith is the best legend, so leave a comment down below if you'd like to see this become a reality. Klein ends with this: Wraith is uniquely useful in our game. All three of her abilities have clear in-combat uses across all skill bands. They're also all uniquely useful for both selfish and selfless use cases. It's so rare to have abilities like her passive that are useful to people who are entirely new at the game, as well as pros in ALGs. We can't change that without breaking the pattern of Wraith's abilities, and we really don't want to do that. I personally think Wraith deserves to be one of the strongest legends in the game because she is uniquely well designed and cool. My issue is more with, should she live at 8% average win rate or 4%? She's at the former, I'm trying to bring her closer to the latter. Literal fucking chills by this, by the way. These two responses from both developers are some of the best I've ever heard, and I'm glad I was even able to find them, especially since there wasn't much news about this, and that people who did hear about this did not enjoy what the developers had to say. I would like to personally thank both of them for such an amazing use of words, and as I always do, I will link the sources below in the description. This is a very interesting topic to discuss amongst players and developers, and I'm sure it makes people's heads spin around their shoulders, but I'd love to hear more about each individual legend, though that is a little too much to ask for. Thank you all so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to drop a like. Comment down below what you think about this. Do you agree or disagree with the devs? Let me know, and of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more videos just like this, because I'm Gamer. I'll see you all next time. Peace!